Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chetan Venkatesh, and I'm here to tell you that your cloud is rubbish. The world deserves a better cloud, and I'm here to give it one. So let's get started with the e-commerce problem. Every day, e-commerce companies are literally burning billions of dollars in the way they run and operate their cloud services. These clouds that are hosting your e-commerce platforms are literally 25-year-old, 30-year-old architectures held together with data structures and techniques that are ancient. And that is resulting in a significant poor user experience for your end users and your customers. And that's because your systems are too slow. You can't really compete with the big giants like Amazon and Google who don't give you their best infrastructure. They save that for themselves. And so you're struggling with lots and lots of problems around how to actually improve the way your website behaves, your e-commerce system is able to process orders and transactions. But the biggest problem that you have, really, is that you have no ability to actually deliver what your customers want. And what do they want? They want instant gratification. So this is why I say the cloud is rubbish, because here we are in 2019, almost 2020, 30 years after e-commerce was invented, and we're still using an aging architecture to try and fulfill our visions and dreams. The cloud is rubbish because, for one, it's simply too far away from your customers. And for you to deliver instant gratification to them, you somehow need to make your e-commerce backend get closer to them. It's also too slow to delight them because almost every interaction is driven by analyzing the customer's behavior, their past histories, processing all of that in microseconds and milliseconds, and being able to do intelligent things with that. So e-commerce, over the last 10 years, has gone from being a big data problem to being a fast data problem. And that's why the cloud is no longer relevant for the way e-commerce will be done in the next 10 years. E-commerce represents, what, 10% of the global spend on retail? If it's going to get to 20% or 30% over the next 10 years, it requires a new architecture. And my company, Macrometa, has been building that architecture for the last couple of years. So the problem with e-commerce is your customers are everywhere, but your e-commerce system is in one place, or what's called the origin. And every interaction that your customer makes in a mobile app or on a website has to transit all the way back to that single origin. And that origin can be hundreds or thousands of milliseconds away, time during which your customer is sitting and waiting, and your systems aren't doing anything interesting. You can use technologies like CDNs to try and solve this, but CDNs don't really help because they can't process data dynamically. They can't analyze what your customers are doing and provide smart actions to your customers. So instead, what my company has done is built a global fabric of data centers. We run a back-end infrastructure for cloud in 25 global POPs around the world, and we take your e-commerce back-end and we globally distribute them in these 25 locations, which all happen to be strategically located in cities and regions that have the maximum e-commerce spend. So that's where it gets interesting, because our backend is about, on average, 10 to 15 milliseconds away from 90% of the population centers that do most of the e-commerce in the world. And compare that to how you're doing business today, where your backend is on average at least 150 milliseconds, or 10 times further away from where you could be with our platform. So this platform now allows you to bring your data, your inventory control, your transactions, your processing, your fulfillment, all of that in region to wherever your customers are, and solve some really, really hard problems that you can't do with the cloud. So we call this an edge cloud. This is not the cloud the way the way it was originally designed. This is a new kind of an edge cloud that is really designed for an architecture to drive billions of digital interactions per second with millions and millions of customers concurrently. And it's a cloud that's meant to provide e-commerce for the next generation. If the first generation of e-commerce was buying things on a web browser and a phone, the next generation of e-commerce is driven by buying things inside virtual realities, augmented realities, inside games, and things like that. And those require a different way to think about the set of problems. So Macrometa has been working with several Fortune 100 companies in retail, in insurance, in gaming. And what we've been doing is solving problems that the cloud can't for them. One example of that is that we've been working with one of the world's largest retailers who's getting let's say, an existential crisis from Amazon and Walmart, who can deliver 40% of their inventory in 2 days. So we're helping this e-commerce company create virtual warehouses from the stores that they have around the country and ship directly from the stores using our edge technology to control their inventories and fulfillment. So we're able to solve some really, really hard problems using this architecture that provide on average 10 times more improvement over the way the web works at a fraction of the cost of how they're doing it today. And what does that mean? It means more revenue for everyone. Our customers are seeing 70% less cart abandonment, 40% better repeat sales, just because we made e-commerce all about instant gratification. My time's almost up, but my company's called Macrometa. Please check us out at macrometa.co. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we don't have any questions from the audience yet, but I have a question. You mentioned a number of different industries, gaming, retail, things like that. Where have you guys seen the most traction, and where do you see the most profitable future?
That's a great question. So we see a lot of interest from companies that are trying to create new digital experiences inside of e-commerce. So we've got a customer that's actually working with a retailer. It's a gaming company, and they're trying to introduce branded goods within the game. So if you're playing Fortnite, for example, you actually can purchase things in the online virtual world that you can then go to their store and purchase offline. And you can customize it, and you can do all these things. So that's a really interesting way of people blending e-commerce with some of these new formats for shopping.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.